My prediction, Joe Biden will not be impeached over his escalation of the withholding of military aid from Israel, despite it being congressionally approved. Donald Trump was impeached for exactly this. And this is not the first time Joe Biden has pulled something like this off. The Hill reports, Democrats impeached Trump for exactly what Biden is now doing to Israel. And the report from the New York Times, Biden puts arms shipments to Israel on hold amid dispute over Rafah attack. The U.S. withheld 3,500 bombs last week out of concern they might be used in a major assault against the southern Gaza City, officials said. Now, my friends, why is Joe Biden withholding military aid to Israel? Because he looks bad in an election. I want to absolutely drive this point home. Now, the bigger picture I fear here is the escalation towards World War III. In that, it may be beneficial that Joe Biden is withholding arms to Israel because their assault on Rafah could absolutely escalate things, with already Iran and Israel exchanging rocket fire. But here's the best part. Joe Biden, fearing these protests and Democrat donor backlash, withholds military aid, congressionally approved, to Israel in a bid to save himself in an election. What was the argument about Trump? They claimed that Donald Trump withheld military aid to Ukraine in order to get Ukraine to dig up some dirt on Trump's political rival. The argument is, on the surface, both individuals trying to win an election withheld congressionally approved military aid. Now, how about that? Joe Biden will not be impeached. Why? Well, guys, we're 6 months away? Half a year from the 2024 election, where Trump feels he's probably going to win. And Joe Biden is a mess. In which case, why would Republicans seek to remove Joe Biden or make a martyr of him? Now, impeachment does not mean conviction. I don't think they will impeach him because it will make it look like they're going after him. Democrats will say Republicans are targeting a political opponent, blah, blah, blah. That being said, I kind of think they should at least impeach him. He's not going to get convicted in the Senate. Perhaps the argument is they don't want to open the door for that possibility, and that Democrats actually go, you know what? You're right. Joe Biden, you're out. And then what happens? Give them an opportunity to swap in someone who might actually poll better, say Gavin Newsom. So Republicans aren't going to be doing that. Now, aside from the domestic political, I think I'll put it this way. Donald Trump is correct. We're knocking on the door of World War III. Many prominent politicians in Europe have already said we are. Donald Trump said Joe Biden's dragging us there, and he is. Perhaps one component of why Joe Biden is withholding ammo is fear of World War III. I don't know if I believe that. I think Joe Biden is panicked because the largest Democrat donors, what do we got? We got the Pritzkers, we got Soros and Rockefeller. They had been funding these far left protests against Israel and providing money to nonprofits that have consistently, for the past 10 years, pushed woke garbage as well as anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Biden is now saying, like, look, the donor class, they're telling him what for. But here's what's interesting. I think this is actually, the narrative here with the donor class is actually a backfiring. Biden is now forced to capitulate to the angry younger generation that is making negative press and attacking him relentlessly. But I believe the donors actually like Israel. Maybe not Soros, to be completely honest. But what happened with TikTok, the reason it's getting banned is because prominent donors called the Democratic politicians in these areas, in their congressional districts, and said, you need to ban this because TikTok is allowing propaganda against Israel. Then you've got other more prominent, larger Democrat donors who had no idea what they were involved in, and now they can reap what they have sown. See, the reason I say it like this, a couple of these, I think Pritzker and Rockefeller foundations said, we stopped funding these things. So it appears once they realized these organizations were actually pushing this stuff, because it's popular on TikTok, I guess, they pulled their donations. Soros, on the other hand, Well, my friends, we are knocking on the door of World War III. We have many a story here. Here's the breaking news update. President Biden paused an arms shipment to Israel last week to prevent the U.S.-made weapons from being used in Rafah. But the news that we actually have, I believe maybe I have it up here somewhere, from OSINT Defender, OS Intelligence Defender on X, senior U.S. officials have now revealed that in addition to the delayed sale of 6,500 Joint Direct Attack Munitions, JDAMs, kits to Israel, worth roughly $260 million last week, the Biden administration has now also paused the delivery of 1,700 Mark 82 500-pound bombs and 1,800 Mark 84 2,000-pound bombs to the Israeli Air Force, which were meant to bolster their stocks of precision-guided munitions alongside the JDAM kits. Officials have said that the delay is due to a failure by Israel to address certain U.S. concerns regarding a ground invasion of Rafah in southern Gaza. Oh boy. Really? Donald Trump withholds military aid to Ukraine, and they say that's illegal. You can't do that. Trump says, I wanted to figure out what was going on with this video of Joe Biden saying, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting $1 billion, which is quid pro quo. And they said Joe Biden's move was aligned with U.S. foreign policy. Fascinating. They say he didn't do anything wrong because he was in line with U.S. foreign policy. Well, I thought the president set U.S. foreign policy. Wrong. The deep state does. And Donald Trump's moves were not in alignment with the deep state. So when he made, which in my opinion are much more sound legal moves, especially as president, they impeached him. Democrats impeached him. The system cannot function this way. The Financial Times reports for Putin, Gaza is an endless gift. The mafia supposedly asked Key Bono, who benefits, when trying to figure out who was behind a hit. There is no evidence that Russia's Vladimir Putin had anything to do with Hamas's horrific slaughter of Israeli civilians last year, 1,200. But Russia has been a leading beneficiary. That's right. Sure. And it's also destabilizing the West and opening the door for expanded conflict. Russia has said that if the U.S. enters the war, Russia will enter the war on the side of Iran. And this is the next step. Express.co.uk. Well, not that I just trust everything Express says, because they love saying World War III. NATO on World War III alert as key Russian ally tests tactical nukes in major boost to Putin. The lethal rocket can travel up to 500 kilometers, 311 miles, and is able to carry payloads between 480 and 700 kilograms. Here we go, baby. NATO countries were put on a red alert yesterday after Belarus announced it would be carrying out drills with its Russian tactical nuclear weapons in a major boost to Vladimir Putin. The exercises follow a stark warning by the Kremlin that tensions between Russia and the West were reaching critical mass and could explode. It's funny, isn't it? Last year, Russia moved some of its tactical nuclear weapons into Belarus, which also borders Ukraine and NATO members Poland and Latvia and Lithuania. Part of the consignment of weapons included Iskander short-range ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads. The lethal rocket can travel up to 500 kilometers, which we read. On Tuesday, Belarus carried out exercises with the Iskanders and a squadron of Su-25 fighter jets. And we just got more for you, I suppose. Here we go. World War III warning from GB News. Russia issues clearest provocation yet after Putin orders nuclear testing. And there we go. Here it is. The West has been warned of a world catastrophe. In a scathing verbal attack from former President Dmitry Medvedev today, following reports that Putin has ordered Russia's military to conduct a range of nuclear weapons tests. Okay. Here we go. I have feared this, and we are once again adding a grain of sand to the heap. A year ago, 2 years ago, Russia will use nuclear weapons. They're not going to fire an ICBM at New York or DC or Tempe, Arizona or something. What they're going to do is they're going to use lower grade, lower yield tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield. A small bomb that can wipe out a large outpost. No more waiting around and playing it safe. Nobody wants to play the card just yet. Putin will. And, I love this because when I've said this over and over again, that Vladimir Putin will use nuclear weapons on the battlefield, the response from everyone is, no, he wouldn't. It would be mutually assured destruction. And I tell people, no, it won't. And there are people who respond with, you're nuts. Putin is not talking about firing a multiple independently targeted reentry vehicle, bombarding the eastern seaboard of the United States with 12 warheads. We're talking about 100 kiloton bombs hitting military bases and cities in Kiev. No one is going to nuke Moscow over Ukraine. There was one politician, I forgot what city he said. Actually, let me see if I can pull up a list here by population. What is this? Let's see. Was it Poznan? I think it was. I think that's what he said. I could be wrong. There's a lot of cities. But I think it was Poznan. I think so. I could be wrong. He said something like, no one would sacrifice New York for Poznan. Meaning, even if Vladimir Putin invades Poland, they still won't use nukes on Russia. You think that anyone cares about Ukraine? Listen, I'll tell you what the U.S. wants in Ukraine. They want control of the Gazprom pipeline. They want to be able to put tariffs. They want to be able to put price limitations on Russia's natural gas into Europe. So they can say, no, they need control of Ukraine for that. They want to cut Russia off from the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. They need the Donbass, namely Crimea, for that. They've not been able to capture Crimea, even when the West soft power annexed effectively Ukraine and the President Yanukovych was ousted. Russia maintained control of Crimea. So they maintained their control of in the Black Sea, as well as the Mediterranean, which the Black Sea goes through the Bosphorus, which is Turkey, into the Mediterranean. And the problem for Russia, there's only this bridge, man-made bridge. So they needed land access, which is the Donbass region, and the U.S. is trying to choke Russia out. Russia will use nukes. Here we go. In his address, Medvedev slated Western leaders as infantile morons and irresponsible scoundrels and claimed the deployment of Western troops in Ukraine, which he called a non-existent country, would merit a terrifying Russian response from which no heads of state would be able to hide. Ukraine is not a place. It is now. It's a beautiful place. A lot of good people. Now it's a war-torn place. But Ukraine literally translates to borderland. That's what it was. Hundreds of years ago, Kiev was the capital of Russia. And then through a series of events, I think Putin was talking about this, Tucker Carlson, Russia moves their capital. They move further east, and then they establish Moscow. When the Soviet Union expands, Ukraine just meant borderland. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia lost control. There was no more Soviet Union, so Russia loses control of many of these states, and Ukraine becomes its own thing. After all of the mechanisms and infrastructure falls apart, then oligarchs, this is what I was told when I was in Ukraine. Here's how it happens. The government collapses, and then some guy and his boys show up with some guns to a factory. They walk up to the guy working the factory, and they say, who do you report to? And the guy goes, I don't know. The Communist Party's gone. And they say, okay, you report to me now. We're going to make sure you get everything for your factory. Your job is secure. You're going to have food. And the guy went, okay, works for me. Whatever you say, boss. The workers at these factories didn't care about conquest. They didn't care about fighting or gangs. They just wanted to know they were going to have food for their families. So the oligarchs, when the system collapses, said, there's no one in charge anymore. They grabbed some guns and they said, I'm in charge now, instantly making themselves billionaires, asserting and establishing control over all of these different mechanisms of power. That's the formation of Ukraine after the fall of the Soviet Union, essentially. And then politicians, of course, but, money talks, BS walks. Medvedev said the chorus of irresponsible scoundrels among the Western political elite calling for troops to be sent to a non-existent country is growing. Now it includes representatives of the U.S. Congress, French and British leadership, and individual madmen from the Baltic states and Poland. Well, then there's this. As we speed through your latest updates on the war that's coming, Russia, China conducting joint exercises in relation to Taiwan, DNI says. You know, it's times like these I always like to do these shout-outs for safeandreadymeals.com, which I won't. But I say that only because the point here is, hope y'all are taking care of yourselves. Hope y'all are prepared. That's it. Do you know how to start a fire safely at a campsite? Do you know how to pitch a tent? Do you know how to gut a chicken? Yeah? You probably don't. Most people don't. My understanding of preparing a chicken for consumption is from watching YouTube videos. And then we had some roosters slaughtered, and they put them upside down in this like funnel looking thing and then remove their heads. But I got to warn you, I got to tell you, this beautiful world we live in, this beautiful society where right now you can say, you know what? I don't want to hear it anymore. You could turn the video off, walk down the street and grab a slice of pizza for a couple bucks. And you can sit there savoring that delicious, fatty slice of thick, cheesy pizza. Maybe you like pepperoni. Most people do. What a great topping. Maybe you want to sprinkle some tomato and Parmesan on top or something like that. That beautiful world can go crumbling in an instant. And I think we're standing on the doorstep. Donald Trump thinks so. Angry Trump calls Biden admin the Gestapo, predicts World War III and everything else. I don't know that at this point Trump could stop it. I certainly think he's still our best bet. But I do believe that we're at this point where so much has happened in Ukraine and Israel. Donald Trump will inherit these wars, and he won't be able to stop them. You know, I was saying a year ago, even maybe like 6 months ago, that I think Donald Trump would end the war in Ukraine overnight. At the moment it's announced he's won the presidency, Putin would stop. Ukraine would stop. There would be a ceasefire. And then as soon as Donald Trump was inaugurated, the war would be over. Arguably saying that ceasefire would be the end of the war. The reason being, Russia knows they don't want to go head-to-head with Trump. They also know Trump is not interested in Ukraine. The Ukrainians would know money's about to dry up. Now, Congress approved funding for Ukraine up to September of next year. And the argument made by many people was that if Trump tries to stop that, they'll impeach him for it. Doesn't matter at this point. Trump won't be convicted. He can do what he wants. Joe Biden cuts military aid congressionally approved to Israel. Nobody seems to bat an eye. So why would it matter next time? Let me show you something. Let me show you this right here. We'll make it fun. Utopia 2020 TV series. 2020. What happened in 2020? I wonder. Anyway, let me tell you about this show. Unfortunately, it was canceled in November after one season of 8 episodes. Weird, because the show actually was, as my understanding, was decently popular. And let me see let's read reception. Many reviews from critics and audiences were critical of the poor timing of the release amid the COVID pandemic. Its level of violence and negative comparisons to the original. Positive marks were given to the pacing and plot twists. It had a 50%, a 6 out of 10. Interesting. I thought the show was pretty good. Here's the synopsis. Comic book fans discover a global conspiracy. A comic book called Utopia contains clues of future events because it is written by one of the architects of a plan designed to prevent ecological disaster as the Earth's population rises and resources are depleted. The plan consists of 1, convincing the world's population that there's an outbreak of a deadly new virus. 2, once convinced of the narrative of the faux pandemic, announce to the public the creation of a new vaccine. 3, through the coordination between global elites and non-governmental organizations, government moved quickly to inject the world's population with this new vaccine. Once the population is injected, it turns out the vaccine is designed to sterilize almost all the people that take it, causing the global population to drop from 7.8 billion to about 500 million and ushering in a new era of plenty. It was criticized by people who claim that it was bad timing considering the COVID-19 pandemic. What a silly premise. Silly. Global elites faking a pandemic to rush through an untested vaccine that sterilizes people. Yeah. Silly. And there are a lot of conspiracy theorists that say, in the show, it's a comic book. And then we have a TV show, which is a work of fiction that claims all of these things. How about that? I certainly don't think any of it's real. I just think it's an interesting coincidence. Well, what's the big show this year? Any guesses? I'll let the suspense build up for all those of you who say, Tim, I don't know. What is the big show this year? What is the new big show about this time? And Fallout. Yeah, Fallout on Amazon Prime. I'm kidding. It's just another TV show. This one's really popular. There's a difference between the one that no one liked. But Fallout is about a post-nuclear world after a war, a bunch of bombs drop between China and the U.S., and all of civilization is wiped out by a nuclear annihilation. Yeah, that's Fallout. So I will say this. It's silly to single out a single show like this. I just think it's funny. I just think it's funny. New survey raises questions. Are Britons worried about World War III? Yes, they are. Most Britons believe another world war is likely within the next 5 to 10 years. Okay. Well, my friends, I hope you have all taken the precautions you need to take. Hopefully, Donald Trump gets elected and there is no World War III. But I can't predict the future. I can only tell you that we are standing on the precipice of major international conflict, and Trump is warning us as well. What does that mean for you? Where does your water come from? Do you know? Do you have a survival guide downloaded on your phone? What happens if the road shuts down? How much food do you have? How long will you make it? I think water is more important. Where's your first aid kit right now? Do you have any antiseptics? Have you thought about these things? Because I got to tell you, if you live in a city, I bet you didn't. And then if it really hits the fan, the last place you want to be is in a major city. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.